Now let's talk about method overriding. This is a very important concept in inheritance. Now distinguish that from method overloading. Now you have seen method overloading before. Method overloading means you have methods of the same name in the same class with different input parameters. That's method overloading. As a revision, this is an example of method overloading. The dumb class here, we have got three methods of the same name: display, 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 and they differ here. The input parameters are different. The first display method takes in nothing. The second display method takes in an integer followed by a string. The third display method takes in a string followed by an integer. So the three display methods can exist together in the same class because they have a different signature. They take in different parameters. So these three methods of the same name called display, they are what we call overloaded methods. And which display gets called depends on what parameters you pass in when you call the display method. Okay, fair enough. That is method overloading. What we are concerned with is method overriding. Now, method overriding means you have another method of the same name and the same input parameters in a child class or in a subclass. Remember what I said just now? When you extend a class, all the methods and attributes will be inherited to you. So what happens if you write another method of the same name and input parameters in the child class? That's called method overriding. What is the effect of that overriding? That's what we're going to explore right now. Now let's go back to the employee class. So employee class, alright, I've added a new method called display. So display takes in nothing in this case and prints out running display of employee and salary of the current employee object. Manager, since it extends employee, will automatically have a display method which it inherits from employee. So I modified the main method in the test class and I'm going to call the display method in manager. We should remember what was actually inherited. Let me compile test. Let me run it. It's going to print what it's supposed to print. Alright, the salary is 0 by default. That's the default value of salary. Everything is fine for now. Now, let me modify manager and put in a method called public void display, which takes in nothing. Notice that the method signature, okay, is the same as the method signature of display in the parent class. So now instead of let me put in some code content. You print out running display of manager, and besides printing out the salary, it's going to print out the bonus because the manager has got the bonus as well, right? Besides salary. Now this method is what we call the overriding method. Alright, because it overrides the display method which was inherited from employee. Save everything. Now this time when I compile tests and I run it, what do you think will happen? When I run test this time, when I call the display method of M, the display method which is written in the manager class gets invoked, not the display method which was inherited from the employee class. So this is an important concept, which means that when you override a method, okay, when you call that method, the the latest one, the one lower in the tree, is the one which gets called. Alright, and this makes a lot of sense. Employee can have a display method. You create an instance of employee, you call his display method, you print out maybe the salary. Now manager, which is a subclass of employee, can override the display method to print out something more specific to a manager. So for example, the display method in manager can print out the salary and the bonus. In director, you can override the display method inherited from manager. So in director, the display method may print out the salary, the bonus, as well as the number of shares owned. So as you go down the inheritance tree, you can have methods which override an inherited method to provide more specific functionality for that particular class. Okay, let's try to link things together. I was saying that previously that the object class, okay, this is the object class, right, has got a method called toString. Here it is, toString. Now let's take a look at the signature of toString. ToString takes in nothing and returns a string. What I'm going to do is, in employee, I'm going to override the toString method which got inherited from object, and I'm going to return a string which, describes. Oh, sorry, I'm writing the toString method in manager. Let me go to employee. Okay, I was saying I'm going to write a toString method in employee, and I'm going to return a string which says salary plus no, that's it. Okay, this is an overriding method. The toString method in employee overrides the one inherited from object. Remember what the toString method object does? It prints out the class name followed by an @ sign. It doesn't print out, I mean it returns a string which goes like this: the class name, an @ sign followed by the hash code, which is some random characters. And I'm going to the manager class, and I'm going to provide a toString method for the manager class as well. The toString for the manager class returns a string which consists of the salary and the bonus. So I'm going to save everything. I'm going to modify my main method. This time when I create a new instance of employee, call it E, and I call a toString method. Let me print it out. I'm going to create a new instance of manager. I call it M, and I'm going to print the returned string from toString. Let me try to compile test and run it, and there you have. This string was this line was the result of line 4 in test. Okay, it's calling a toString method of employee and is printing out. Now this line is the output due to line 7. I'm calling the toString method of M. M is a manager object. Alright, the toString method written in the manager object in the manager class overrides the toString method inherited from employee, which in turn overrides the toString method written in java.lang.object. So I hope you understand what is method overriding now. It serves a very important function. You override methods when necessary in a child class, okay, to provide functionality more specific to that child class. And one important point to remember when you override the method signature must be exactly the same. Actually, that's not really true. Let me put it another way. The return type and the name of the method and the input parameters must be the same. Okay. Now, the accessibility modifier, this word public, in this case is public, need not be the same. There's one rule here which says that if you are doing method overriding, when overriding a method, okay, from a parent class, of course, okay, the overriding method, which means the method in the child class, okay, can have a same or more public or more accessible, okay, accessibility modifier. So this is one rule. And what do I mean by that? Now remember, there are 4 levels of accessibility for methods and attributes. Now let's assume there's a method called display in the parent class. Let's say employee is the parent class and display is protected. Now in manager, which is the child class, you want to override display. Same method signature, same input parameters. You can actually make display public if required. So display in manager can be either public or protected. Keep it as protected, or you can make it public. You cannot make it private. You cannot make it package accessibility. You can't. Let me prove it to you quickly. Okay, let's go to employee class and let's assume display is protected. And in manager, I'm trying to override the display method and I make it public. This should work. Alright, let me save everything and let me try to compile manager. Should work. On the other hand, this is still the manager class. If I try to override display and make it something more restrictive than protected, private for example, save it, I expect a compilation error which tells me that the display method in manager cannot override the display method in employee. The reason is because you're attempting to assign weaker access privileges. Private is weaker than protected. It was protected in employee, the parent class, and hence when you override the display method, it has to be the same level of accessibility that is protected or something which is looser or more public. In this case, you have only 2 choices, protected and public. So remember this rule, and there's a good reason for this rule. Remember I was saying just now that as you go down the tree, the classes become bigger and bigger because you inherit all the attributes and methods, and you can add in your own attributes and methods. You cannot remove methods and attributes. Alright, so when I say remove, making a when you override a public method and you make it private, that is a form of removing. That means you're actually preventing outsiders from calling your method if you are allowed to make an overriding method more private than it was in a parent class. So remember this, and that's it for this session.